Okay.
Okay, everyone, welcome to chapter 7. What Freud was really talking about, the concept of penis envy. Okay, Mary, please take charge.
Well, first of all, not going straight into penis envy, I do feel like maybe a more masculine energy can have highlight that. What I'd like to highlight is the fact that opening her theory of whether she thought was Dr. Francis Cress Welsing saying that was he really a Jew, or is she saying that what kind of Jew, or what are you contributing to your culture if you use your psychoanalysis career to talk about penis envy or talk about these white supremacist ideals, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to talking about your own, like doing your own part for your culture of understanding why white supremacy has basically degraded your Jewish race, the Jewish race.
He was
Yeah.
definitely a Jew.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, I think she's just commenting on how, like, this scientist, I mean, this psychiatrist, Freud, did not use like his field to help to understand why his people were being systematically destroyed by the Germans, and that's why he maybe failed to understand what was happening to his people. He maybe like, yeah, I think she just emphasizing that.
Yeah, and I think this kind of affirms it on page 94. Certainly, if Freud, as a Jew, was going to spend most of his energy thinking about and decoding behavior, he should have thought in greatest detail about why his people, the Semites, historically had been under attack throughout the whole of their European experience. That Freud should tell others what to do with the behavior while he failed to provide answers for himself, and for his entire group suggests that one can only take his ideas with the proverbial grain of salt. But as I demonstrate, sorry, Freud perhaps feebly and unconsciously was struggling to discuss the major issue of his existence as an oppressed, non-white victim in a white supremacy culture. So I think, not I think, but I believe that a lot of non-white people and black people are like still running away from the truth that they are living in a racist, white supremacist culture and society, aka like white supremacy. A lot of black people and non-white people refuse to believe that white supremacy is real. Um, and Freud was definitely someone who I believe had the same um, realization or thought process or mindset.
I agree.
Agreed.
I would
All right,
like to
am I?
quickly make a
Yeah.
statement if I may. Um, I don't want to confuse the issues here about race, but we must understand that the term Jew is a religious term, not a racial term. And we must keep that in mind when we're having these discussions and understand that these African albino uh, Caucasoid Europeans have different levels of hatred for one another. So then they have these different classifications and saying that like Israel, right, is a historical truth is not correct. And so, please, I would implore everybody to do a little bit more research so that we'll have a clear understanding because fraud is having a fraud
My
moment.
daddy is funny.
Yeah, well, he
Listen,
is because
And then he got this long name for white people. Every time he learns something new about them, he adds it to their names. Like
well,
albino, caucasoid. Like every time he learns something new.
that's what they are. I mean, if you look at it historically, right?
Yeah, it
But
is. Proves everything.
so I added all the answers. There won't be any confusion as to who we're talking about. Okay,
Oh,
I'm quiet.
and speaking about binos, you will also see like white people celebrating like albino like animals that they find in the wild. I was listening to to some news, to some Black news, and they were celebrating an albino squirrel, I believe, that someone had seen, and they were like, "Oh my God, look at the albino squirrel!" Like, and because they relate to the albinos because they understand that it's tougher for albino animals to like exist. There's a famous albino whale, I think the name was like Maliga or something like that, like Miglagla or something like that, some weird name. So like they celebrate whenever all like albino animals, you'll see it in that culture, and that's a manifestation of them knowing their true origins.
I also believe that I recently saw a albino gorilla being celebrated. Um, I don't know where, but I do believe
See?
that's it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Give me your mic. I want to read from page 94. Just to I definitely have always known that Jewish, like that term Jew was a religious, and I never really, I understood why we can like add it to hold under the oppression of white supremacy to cause further confusion amongst who is being genocided and who are actually being oppressed via extreme measures. This is from page 94. It is my view that the word Semite is derived from the Latin prefix semi, which means half. Semites of the Jewish religion are persons from Africa who are half black and half white. Black plus white always equals colored, meaning persons carrying in their genetic makeup some capacity to produce melanin pigmentation, and in some instances, a genetic capacity to produce kinky hairs. Jews who left Africa and went to Europe were colored people when they arrived there hundreds of years ago. I would love to have like more insight on this from like John or anyone who has insight to like what are Jewish people and like what is, you know, and why is it that we have like not included them and yeah, I don't know.
Well, I can have a few comments for you. They actually are Europeans, and that was a place called Kazakhstan, and this is where they emanate from. I do have further information on it, but it's been a while since I've opened that can of worms for them. But if you can look it up, the Khazarians of Kazakhstan, and you can find that this is where they emanate from.
Thank you so much for sharing. Um,
I was gonna say, sorry, Gary. That wasn't most of the Middle East considered Africa before a certain point.
Well,
So
yeah, I'm aware of that of North Africa.
yeah, the Middle East is just another white supremacist experiment. The Middle East is North Africa. That's what it was formerly called before they started terrorizing the brown folk over there.
and then colonizing, it was the Greeks and then the Romans and then whether the Huns like went through Asia into Europe and then North Africa, but it was just a big mess.
And also, can I chime in? And also, what I read and what I understood was that during that time, during that period prior to 1948, when it was agreed to allow the Europeans to occupy Israel, and I'm going further back in history. I forget the exact era. There was war, huge wars going on between the Muslims and the Christians, and the Ashkenazis, the Khazarians, who John was referring to, were in the middle. They were sandwiched in the middle, and they were told, "Look, you have three groups here. You have the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jews." And you have to, and I think at the time the Jews were being excluded from the war for some reason or another. So they chose to become Jews. That was the chosen thing of the Europeans. Those Europeans are not Jews. The original people of Israel look like Palestinians. That whole area is Palestine. And that was just a classic invasion, just like Europe invades everywhere else. And obviously, we all know the history. In 1948, the United States government backed Israel in the war against the Palestinian people and conquered that area. And to this day, they are a conquered, occupied land. Those aren't real Jews. The original Jews were Ethiopians. Those people that look like that. And I mean, this is documented. This is anthropologically proven. This is not speculation.
Can someone for me, just because I read this chapter, but I just had a hard time understanding. I get her argument as to why she needed to tell us Freud's background about him being a Jew, so we can kind of understand where his thought process is and where he's coming from. But I'm just trying to understand in general. Okay, we know that about him. So how does this relate to penis envy?
What she
All
was
right, maybe.
The fact that he felt like he had to have some sort of whiteness because he was an academic as well. I think what she was kind of getting at was that he felt like he had to pander to the white audience for his research to be taken seriously. So he didn't stand up for his people in order for his work.
Oh yeah, I got that part. I understood all that. So she's basically negating any of Freud's arguments. So I get that. I understand that. I just don't understand. Okay, now that we have all that, okay, how does this penis envy thing, like, what is this about in this chapter? What does it mean? What is she saying?
Let me read this for you. It's page 97. It's gonna be furthermore, it is my interpretation that the major concern is with the power of the genetic material and the black testicles, and that the concern is displaced to a less threatening object, the phallus, and its size. To appreciate my analysis, remember that the major percentage of black males who have been lynched by white males have had their genitals attacked, removed, and taken away by white males, i.e. carried with them on their persons. This behavior is peculiar to white males and their relationship to men of color. I interpret this behavior as fear of the black male's genitalia, thus it must be attacked and destroyed. But there also is envy and a desire for possession of the same. This should help to explain why white males who wish others to view them or wish to view themselves as strong, powerful, and important puff and suck on huge black cigar. Indeed, the more powerful they wish others to believe they are, the longer the cigar. So does that help to contextualize your question, Celia?
Yes, that answered it perfectly. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Do we have any more comments on this chapter?
Yeah, I wanted to share. To me, Celia, in short, this chapter is about how another projection. White people have an inherited fear of white genetic annihilation, and the fixation is on the genitalias of black males and all non-white males. Therefore, there is a subconscious or conscious projection of maybe there's power in this tool, there's power in this part of the black male body, which is the genitalia, which is the place that houses the self-reproducing material. And I think just the penis envy is a really interesting manifestation of that projection. And I think she just went into depth to debunk not debunk his work, but say that it didn't help and it wasn't constructive to Jewish people.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything you want to read or share from chapter 7?
Yeah, if not, I'm down to keep it pushing.
For me,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
just,
down.
yeah, okay. For me, the observation of chapter 7. Sorry, thank you. The observation of chapter 7 for me is just very much shows the symbolism of how, because I'm constantly looking at how society commodifies this and sells it back to us, and how if we feel oppressed or stressed, we'll take to a cigarette, or you will want to smoke a cigar because of the imagery that the Godfather gives you in the sense of it pertaining to power. Just constantly how all of these states of oppression are just used to control us. And I look at to draw us in, and I look at Coca-Cola, the bottle shape, it looking like a phallus. Rockets, the starting of movies or any introduction to a country, they kind of show their military weapon that they have, and they're all in the shape of a penis or a car. All these things that are just commodified around the male penis as a way of drawing power without actually saying, you can't get power this way. We're just using it because we understand that this is how you operate on a subconscious level. So understanding more of that, and then using it to basically disassociate any, okay, so in my own self, in any way that I would want to drawing power for myself, do I relate this to masculine traits? Is that how I see power? And trying to just break that out of my mind and remind myself of how the divine feminine is just as powerful as such as how the male has been made to be perceived. That's what the thoughts that came up in my head from reading the whole chapter.
Yeah, I think that's really it's a good comment, because it reminds me of how like penis envy is like a secondary thing, because first it affects the men, and then it's like projected onto the woman. That's why they even have penis envy. So I want to read this part because I think it relates to what you just said. White males, with Freud's help, have projected their own sense. My bad. Let me start over. White males, with Freud's help, have projected their own intense sense of loss, injury, inadequacy, and envy as genetically recessive albino mutants who are being annihilated by genetically both Black, non-white males and females. It is the white males who have the primary penis envy, which is manifested in their envy of Black male penises. They then project their sense of inferiority onto white females, causing them in turn to develop secondary penis envy. The accuser now stands himself accused. So just imagine like the white males and the white females pointing fingers at each other.
And sorry, before we move on, I wanted to just give an example of touching back on what I had tried to like articulate earlier. The campaign that I was talking about, it was actually in 1929, and it was called Torches of Freedom. And it was basically a campaign, I'm just reading directly from Wikipedia. It was a campaign equated smoking in public with female emancipation. Some women had been smoking decades earlier, but usually in private. In 1890s, this satirical cartoon from Germany illustrates the notion that smoking was considered unfeminine by some in the period. So basically, trying to say that if you do this masculine thing, you now will be emancipated and you have the power that you desire. And just how they understood the psychology of this and used it to sell the tobacco.
Wow.
Okay, this makes sense, and it's okay. I just had a aha moment. There's because I'm looking at some of chapter 8 while Mary is speaking, and a lot of it is symbolism, because even when we get into chapter 8 about the guns, it's going to come back up. And I think this penis envy, and like she's bringing up with the cigarettes, it's all about this symbolism, and this symbolism is literally what's controlling our psyches. If you're in this white way of thinking, this European thought process, and it's just digging in more how impactful and important and critical these symbols are, and they come up in so many different ways. Like, we're talking about penis envy, but yet we're bringing up cigarettes, and it's going to happen again with the guns and how that represents white male penises. So it's very interesting how symbolism has literally appeared in almost every chapter.
Yeah, world of symbols. That's what we live in.
Yeah, I had 2 bits I wanted to read before we and it's just gonna hammer in what Mary had just finished saying about the ways in which women try to gain power in a white supremacist society. But this first one is pertaining mostly to penis envy, how it's such a deep projection that it's even projected upon the children of white people as well. This is on page 97, I believe. In my practice, a Black mother informed me that her 6-year-old son attending a predominantly white elementary school reported to her that one of his white male classmates had told him that he, the Black child, had a large penis. The mother stated that she asked her son what his response was. Her son told the white boy that all Black boys had large penises. It is obvious that in an above situation in a school with majority of white children, at shower or bathroom time, the white child would have had an ample opportunity to see the size of white penises. He would have had that same opportunity at home. This need to comment on the size of the Black child's penis indicates that Black penises must have stood out by all of his other comparisons, even at this tender age. It is also certainly clear that the Black male child has no concerns or fears about the adequacy of the Black male penis. Symbolically, I see this as someone already being a child and being aware that there's something genetically deficient about their genitals to some regards, even if it is a projection or something that's inherited that they're born with. I can't confirm. And I also wanted to but read this really quickly. This is on page 98. And this is about how white women utilize the penises of other men to gain a perception of power, and also to like combat and I guess make jealous their white counterparts. Some white females react to this imposed sense of their genital inferiority by seeking to liberate themselves and secure Black penises of their own. Penises white males consider more powerful than their own. This is a dialogue that increasing numbers of white females covertly and perhaps unconsciously conduct with white males as white females parade in front of white males with Black male, in parentheses, Black penis they have conquered for their own. The silent dialogue between a white male and a white female and the social confrontation goes something like this. Now I have one, a penis that is bigger and stronger than yours, one that I know you envy. So in short, this summarizes penis envy, how it's displayed in real life situations. Living in London, I see more interracial relationships than I see more same race relationships. And yeah, I just think all of that is a direct result of people wanting to escape their reality and maybe find some type of safety in a system of racism and supremacy. There's so many tragic arrangements.
I agree with that, and I feel like, especially observing it in London, I think a lot of it is to do with like upward social mobility and feeling like they can elevate socially in like their career or class or just living standard. I feel like that has a lot to do with relationships in the UK.
And
That's
also,
I can only speak for the UK.
it's
Yeah,
like
yes,
there's that, and then there's the way that usually the white um, person in the relationship speaks. For them, it's like a bragging thing. Like, I don't know. It's almost like, yeah, I got a black girlfriend, or I got a black boyfriend. Like, there's that very, like, I got one. Like, I'm a Pokemon trainer and I caught one. Like, it's very strange.
Well, yeah, I was trying to comment on what Ruby said. Just that whole being shown off by your partner is why these tragic arrangements are so tragic, and they can only be three things, tacky, trashy, or terroristic. So,
Oh Lord, back to his three things.
yeah, reinforce it. Penis envy. You got penis envy now. Like another reason why these tragic arrangements, seen as an object, and your partner is not an object. It's a living, equal cosmic being, but under the system of white supremacy, you know.
But also, it's like the proximity to whiteness as well. It's like the lighter your weight gets. It's like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I wanted to enhance what Ruby has said, not enhance, but add to it. Yeah, we live in a society where it is perceived that you will be safer or more liked if you ascend to whiteness, if you do things that make white people comfortable, and if you do things that make white people think you're not a threat, if you are in close proximity to whiteness, you are perhaps, just like you have a pleasant reality, but I don't believe that it's true. I believe that you are just constantly under attack. I don't think it's healthy to be around people who do not actually see your survival as something that should be sustained. And I just think when until racism and white supremacy is ended, maybe we should reconsider who we share our bodies with, because I was reading some stuff today about sex and the power of sex, and how if you are like a black woman or a black person, a black man, and you sleep with a like white person, how self-destructive that can be to your psyche and to your ability to perceive you're living in a racist society, to perceive and see the power of this.
Yeah.
And the person that compared it to suicide, and it hurts to say it, but it definitely made sense to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I like what you said there, Trey.
can I have no problem attesting and confessing to being sexually sewered, which is the correct term to use when engaging in sexual activity with a white person. Yeah, I used to be sexually sewered by this white woman who was so-called educated at Berkeley, studied psychology, had tons of books, but whenever like I talked about like trauma, like black trauma in particular, she's like it was really not like hearing it. It was like just the sexually sewering part was like just a lot of like odd energy that I've never have once gotten from melanated folk. So it's definitely accurate. Like they don't view sex the same way as we do, and I've been sexually assaulted by multiple white women. So this is not like a one example type thing. This is like, so that's just my testimonial.
John, you're participating? John, something?
Okay, maybe I'm having communication problems here. Let me try and straighten this out.
You can be
Now,
heard
can you
now.
guys hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay. After slavery and during the Reconstruction period and the Jim Crow period, you know, of course, they would hang us on trees and, you know, castrate us and all that, you know, during that period. And then came the, you know, the 60s and the hippie movement, and it was free love, and it was all good for everybody just to intermingle. And then the 80s and 90s, it kind of switched back to a situation to where it was frowned upon for black and white to be intermingling. And so now here we are in the 2000s and 20s, and we have all of this violence being perpetrated on us. So my suggestion is to be very careful about going out and doing this sort of thing. And I'm not against whatever's anyone's personal preference is as far as a mate, but you brothers and sisters are very young, and I just hope that you proceed with caution.
Mm. Thank you very much for that, Church. I personally was feeling as well, any relationship that you get into, any sexual relationship that when you do that, it's a soul tie. And on a spiritual level, it unlocks so much within yourself and that other person. So if I would say if your ancestral DNA, especially if it's not dealt with or unleashed, I feel like you can unlock a lot depending on your choice of partner, especially, well, I don't want to say especially, but especially if you're dealing with somebody like somebody who represses the white supremacist culture and is white, and you don't know what that could unearth in you and yourself, and you could end up having to do a lot of work. Like I see a lot in a lot of interracial relationships. I can't speak on every single one, but the ones that I've personally experienced, not I personally, that I've seen in my family, like I could, after a couple of years, I don't know if it was on a sexual basis or a mental basis or just dealing with their own racial disparities and being in a relationship with somebody who wasn't experiencing that level of oppression. You could see it on them after 2 years. You could see it on their physical appearance and emotional drainage. And so, yeah, it's on so many levels that it affects us.
Yeah, I wanted to share, but what I wanted to share is slipping my mind. So. Mm-hmm. That's why you're muted.
Do we want to get to the closing comments on chapter 7?
Oh yeah, I mean, before that's why I just remembered. So I have a theory, and this is based off my experiences. I have a theory that women who engage with sex with white men inherent certain levels of hatred towards themselves and black men. And I'm only saying this because I've had experiences with multiple black women who I feel like projected a level of inferiority towards me, and then demeaning practices and like abuse towards me, and a lot of covert and overt ways. And both of these women were engaged with long relationships of white men, and I definitely felt hate resonating from these people. I felt like a strong wanting for my like disappearance, basically. And I do think that is the power of sex. I do think because when white people were, dominating and eliminating the Neanderthals, they were using sex as domination. Sex was not really for pleasure for white people. It's more of a tool for domination. So when they have sex, they're not making love, quote unquote, or trying to reproduce their self-image. It's more of domination and like a tool of war against black people. So be careful if you're gonna engage in the activity. Like John said, proceed with caution.
So just before we go to the next chapter, this is obviously a difficult conversation. This is a difficult topic for me because my mother's white, as you all know, and my father's the blackest thing since the skillet. And They were married almost 60 years. And my mother was from the Quakers, had the Quaker background.
Oh man, the Quakers, eh?
And these people were pacifists, and they, participated in the Underground Railroad, although they, suffered from white supremacist ideology as well. And then her husband, my grandfather, was a fire and brimstone Northern Baptist John Brown abolitionist, right? And they were socialists. They were revolutionaries of their time, of their day, way before the 60s. And they believed that slavery was evil. It was that of the devil. And my mother, all of our life, felt like it was her primary purpose to shatter the myth of white supremacy. That was her gig. And on my father's side of the family, we all believed that those people were Semites. They were just passing for white, right? Because of their beliefs and the principles that they stood on. But personally and politically growing up, what I saw was my mother way ahead of her time, realizing the evils of white supremacy and connecting with someone who was completely conditioned by white supremacy, who felt that, like was mentioned earlier, everything we do, everything you did, the way you walk, talk, dress, look, behave, had to be acceptable by white folks. And I think it was a self-hatred on the part of my father that enabled him to marry a white woman. And his hate of his black skin, and now where I stand is that I wish I had dark skin and kinky hair. That's who I identified with growing up. And I asked my mother one time, I said, Mom, how do you feel about me never having dated a white girl? And she just very simply said, that's not who you identify with. And that was her answer. No discussion. Didn't go any further than that. So
I like that answer. I like that answer.
I wanna give like a little history on the Quakers, because I hear them like thrown out as a good guys a lot. And during like slavery, when these boats would go on voyages, and when they would like have accidents or would get lost at sea, they would often have to resort to cannibalism. And the Quakers, just like their other white counterparts, ate the black people first. So the Quakers did not do that as much as they could to end the system of slavery. They were very much complicit in slavery. So they don't get a pass. They were very much dominant in the culture, and also eating black people during slavery. And this is from The Delectable Negro. Read that book or watch the videos on our YouTube. Yes. But yeah.
I also I was talking to Mary today, and I talked about how I was talking and I misspoke, and I said the universe is messed up, and then I said never society is messed up. Universe is totally fine. It's just that society has been infiltrated and controlled by racist white supremacists, and we live in a racist white supremacist society, and because of that, there is conflict, and like even how Ben was like brought into this realm, having a self-hating father and a mother who said she wanted to shatter the myth of white supremacy. That's not a myth. It's a real thing, and I think your mother probably wanted to your mother wanted to do good in the world, but did she want to actually end race white supremacy? I think the programming disallows for that to be a case. I think the programming if if black people are shooting people in the street, then white people are very much fine avoiding and pretending to care about black lives and wanting to end racism. Like, to me, those things can coexist. They have to coexist. I think they have to coexist.
I'm gonna say as well, Ben, on your account and your story with you said about your father, kind of that self-hatred is only a result of white supremacy. The fact that you're born into a culture, like into a world that hates you because of the color of your skin, inevitably you'll end up hating the color of the skin that you're in. And that gets passed down generation through generation. So it's very much that healing, I think needs to come first and foremost. And it's like it says in the ISIS papers, like it needs to come from Black psychiatrists, from us, like healing ourselves and healing each other and having more of these discussions. I think having white saviors is not a great idea. Although allyship, I don't know, allyship is something that's important, but I don't know. How do you guys feel about white allyship?
I think the Europeans have had centuries to be true allies to us. They have failed to do so, and they have also failed to show proof that they are capable in doing so.
I wanted to say one more thing about like not mixed race people, but the historical context of mixed race people. I think historically white people have understood the power of creating mixed race people in order to continue to divide and oppress black people. I think I'm reading this book right now called The Destruction of the Black Civilization, and it talks about how white people systematically and methodically like worked really hard to create mixed race people. And I personally think Arab people are like created solely to oppress and dominate and to basically be like the middleman between black people's oppression all across Africa and North Africa and the so-called Middle East. And I think these things are like important to bring up and talk about because it's in their nature to use nature against us, And
the nature of procreation.
Yeah. And before I was reading any of these books, I had a conversation when I first came to London with one of my friends who is mixed race, and she told me flat out, she's from Brazil. She says in Brazil, the genocide is like hyper intense and hyper realized. They're being killed very violently in Brazil, alarming numbers. And her being mixed race, she says her white side of her like definitely is not the best part of her, and also she has a lot of like white supremacist ideology, and she understands that she was created to, help dominate and control black people. And to me, this is really like it's not insane. It's very very unfortunate. So that's why we have to claim our own minds and not use the minds that we're given. We have to truly be our most authentic selves and get close to our Africanness as possible, as close as possible.
That in many cases backfired because you have people like Frederick Douglass, Denmark Vesey. Those people were half white and were the most vehement abolitionists and enemies of white supremacy.
Yeah, I think one thing, like what Ben said, I think all their weapons of mass destruction will eventually backfire. Like you just said, those inspirational figures that give people hope and show black people as the antithesis of what white people think we are, which are like savages and criminals, basically. Black people and criminality exist in the same context. Or regions as well.
Wait, so going back to Ruby's question about can we get allyship? First of all, I want to do research on the Quakers and find out more about that. I think maybe that's what I was just about to talk about. But I wanted to talk about the allyships that we've had in history. Like I don't know too much about him, but does anybody know much about John Brown, the guy who
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know about.
with Harriet Tubman?
Yeah, I know about John Brown. I also know that like such people like John Brown are so rare that that happened like almost 200 years ago. So if you only have one person who's willing, one white person who's willing to truly die for like abolishing slavery, then that's an indication of like the majority of like white people. Because whenever people talk about like abolish people who try to abolish slavery and they're white, it's the only person they could say was really about it was John Brown because he fought and died about it.
I personally believe that the more that people are waking up to critical thinking and wanting to be on a side of understanding what white supremacy actually is, and wanting to be on the side of bringing a sense of true justice to the world, they will align just on the base of like morality and cause. Because so far, through like the lulled sleeping stages that we've kind of, I'm not to say that we haven't had rifts in revolutions or like during the times of the Black Panthers. I'm sure there were a high level of consciousness, but like in my understanding, in my time on the planet since 1990, that it's kind of felt like a lull sleeping stage of things being allowed to happen or seeing major distractions. And now that we're in a time where distractions are reducing, I feel like allyship is more possible because people are seeing with more cleaner eyes. And now it's almost like a choice. Okay, do I want to contribute to white supremacy for my own advancement because let's say I'm Asian and I'm white passing, or I'm not white, not to say that you could be white passing, but you understand the power dynamics and using that to your existence, you're now practicing white supremacy. I feel like there are Black people who can practice white supremacy now, in terms of
Echo, can you tell the
manipulating the
echo
situation to the best advantage. But I'll leave it at that.
I wanted to just say that Ruby just left, but I'm going based off reality and what I see and witness and what I experience. There's no organization I can find and go to get money from white people and this quote unquote white allyship. So right now, white allyship is not real. It is an imaginary construct. It is something that I've never seen or experienced white allyship. Please tell me if you have, and if it helped you live longer and reach economic emancipation. Oh, that's awesome, because that is the allyship we need. Like what Sawa said, white people have had centuries to prove to be allies. So there's not one like national organization led by white people that collectively gives money to Black people. Unless that happens, there's no allyship because we need money to sustain ourselves in this white supremacist society. So I don't know what allyship is being
How much money?
manifested here. What you saying? But yeah, it's just I don't believe these groups and these like anti-racist white organizations. I don't believe them. I don't believe their agendas, and I don't think we should depend on them or even seek their efforts. I think the more of Black people and non-white people that we can get to talk about racism, white supremacy, and use the correct language will be enough to turn the tables upside down.
Yeah, and Mary, I totally understand where you're coming from, but you are looking at it very optimistically, and I love optimism as well. But the distractions are definitely like not decreasing. The distractions are like only like wrapping up. This whole COVID, Trump, Boris, these people are like huge distractions that we like. White people are literally talking about. White people are at the point of openly talking about a race war, and it's called a boogaloo. So the distractions are still here, but the things are like definitely intensifying, and this race war the white people have created and are conducting against us. So I don't see like a huge consciousness awareness, because Antifa is not talking about white supremacy. Antifa is was created on a foundation of confusion and deceit. It doesn't know that it should be targeting white supremacy. BLM doesn't know it should be targeting white supremacy. These are very like, huge distractions as well. Anything not getting towards the issue of white supremacy is causing either confusion or deceit, and can be like attributed to a distraction as well. You rarely ever see like news people saying, "What can we do about this white supremacy?" They'll say white supremacy here and there, but what can we constructively do about it? They never say that stuff.
Well,
Hmm?
I was going to say that the great scholar and ancestor John Henry Clark put it really simply, and he said, "We as black people have no friends."
Dang. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I think I saw that lecture. Yep.
And I agree with that statement. As a black man living in this world, I receive abuse and horrible treatment from non-white people and white people at pretty similar rates. Hard to distinguish from the two. Anti-blackness and white supremacy coexist in the same hand, and non-white people do enjoy, practicing racism and supremacy. And does not give them power in this system. It simply makes them a performer and an active agent of white supremacy. So when you become an agent of white supremacy, you abuse and subjugate other people based off their skin color, but you get none of the benefits of being white. You're still liable to be killed by the state. You're still liable to be, attacked by the state. You're highly surveillance, and your movement is extremely scrutinized and controlled.
All right. Any closing comments for chapter 7? All righty. All right. Well, this was a great discussion. Let's move on.